as any exorcist will tell you, it only takes one mortal sin to become possessed. Highly unlikely. It doesn't happen very often, but that's all it takes. The devil only needs one mortal sin.
Previously, we've covered this together, and for someone who has a huge following, in the millions in fact, and who are mostly young people, this needs to be addressed and talked about. And recently, he met up with a self-proclaimed witch during a live stream, and the interaction quickly turned chaotic, leading him to flee the scene in apparent fear.
I have a few things special. I work with crystals, and I work with a particular type of crystal, which is this one called the Andara. Actually, I'm going to give you a little one to hold. They come for very few regions of the world. These here are particularly from California, but I have also some from the motherland, from the Congo. And with these crystals, they do a lot of work for me and for you. The only thing you have to do is just to be open and say yes.
Okay.
And is related to a chakra. Do you know what the chakras are?
Yeah, like Naruto. Like your chakra, like Naruto.
The chakra. So chakra is the Sanskrit word for wheel. So we have these energetic wheels throughout our body. We have ones that walk with us, from above that connects us to the cosmos. And then we also have ones below us that connect us to the earth. And then we have crown. This is what connects us to the divinity. We have a third eye. It's the truth, how we see. All right? So we have a third eye open. We're seeing the truth of the situations. When you hear they say it is what it is, that's some third eye, not what we want it to be, not what we're conditioned, all right? Then we have the throat, it's our expression. How do you express yourself? And the best we can do on this evolution of life is be the most authentic.
Now, for all of you regulars here, you have listened to a lot of priests warning us about not doing this sort of things.
There's a power there, but it's not the power of God, it's the power of the evil one. And when somebody turns to the world of the occult, then they're giving authority to the demonic to act in their life. People may turn to the occult looking for quick and easy answers, maybe trying to consult the spirits of the dead. And initially they may seem to be good. And usually the demonic does that as a way to lure people into a false sense of security. But eventually, if the devil is going to bestow a favor, if you will, he's going to expect to be paid. And all people that turn to the world of the occult can quickly find their lives beginning to spiral downwards and out of control. There are many stats out there that would say that the majority of, I think it's now 1 out of every 5 Americans claims to be an atheist. Even if they've been in a traditional Christian home, there is a rejection of that Christian identity. You think about it, Christianity built Western civilization, and now we're turning our backs on that. I think that's why we see an identity crisis.
Black obsidian is a volcanic glass that is so mystical, it creates a window into other dimensions. Black obsidian has been the preferred tool for shamans, mystics, and psychics for thousands of years, and it has proven its viability over and over again. You can look into it for scrying, or meditate with it, or sleep with it, and it will give you answers, but be forewarned, it does not lie. It will tell you the future, it will tell you the past, it will tell you the right now. It is direct, and sometimes even harsh, but it will give you the truth.
We don't really know who we are or whose we are, namely God. And so people then are questioning, do we really need God? And that's really the original temptation. Going back to the book of Genesis, where the serpent says to Eve, did God really tell you? What's interesting in that is that even the devil, he's not an atheist. He knows that God exists, but he wants us to live as if God did not exist. And the way that we do that is by deifying ourselves.
However, in case you're new here and you think this is just playing around, maybe because you don't believe there's angels and demons, well, listen to this. What can happen to you if you persist?
Okay, so this is a very important principle when working with demons. They don't like to be disembodied spirits. They hate it. They like to be in somebody or something. So when you invite in a spirit, either directly or accidentally, a fallen spirit, a demon, they like to be tucked inside you, taking up residence there. That makes them very happy. That's the least amount of suffering they have, is when they're in somebody. And so they don't want to come out, but legally they have to if you make them come out. So if you suddenly decide, I'm going to end this behavior that caused this thing to come in. Let's say there was name your sin. And this thing, maybe you were playing with Ouija boards and this thing entered into you. Then you renounce it and you say, I'm never going to do this again. I'm sorry, Lord, have mercy on me. And then it has to go and it leaves. But if you don't reconnect with God, if you don't have a relationship with God, and this happens all the time, somebody comes to me for help. They say, I can't stand this. Get this demon out of me. And I say, what's your faith life like? I don't have faith life. I don't go to church. I don't want to go to church. It's not part of my lifestyle. And I say, well, then I'm not going to drive that demon out of you, because that demon is going to come back with worse demons that are going to make you even suffer more, because that's their right, and they have the authority to do it. And they do travel in packs. And so that person will be much worse off. It's only the relationship with God that seals the person and keeps them in a protected mode where the demons do not want to come back, nor do they desire to be in a house that's already occupied by the Holy Spirit. They don't want to be there. But if you don't let the Spirit dwell in you, they're happy to come back, and they bring their friends. And that's what that scripture means. And 7 is a symbolic number. 7 could be 7. 7 could be 700. Legion was thousands. That was in the Gerasene demoniac.
And then, moving on to the next subject, there's 2 actually. The first one is on voodoo and celebrities, athletes, politicians coming to them for help. This was actually discussed during a live stream on a channel called Little Light Studios. That's pretty standard. We've listened to Father Reehil and a few other priests being very outspoken about this. But just for the sake of this video, let me at least share with you this clip from the live stream. And then I'll share the part where I have trouble with their discussion, their misunderstanding. I'll share it after this.
So he was a very high up in the occult in the Caribbean, because people came from other islands and came from abroad, came from the US, came from everywhere. And they would come, to help. So we had politicians would come. There would be entertainers, music industry people, and also people in the sports world, and also just regular people. But I didn't know that people in entertainment and sport dabbled in that kind of thing. Like, if I was not in that world, I would never think that is what they did. And so sometimes you will have athletes, and not saying there are not talented athletes. There are. But a lot of times these games, football and other sports, soccer even, a lot of times it's not the athletes that are winning the game. It's actually demons there that are coordinating everything, for them to win and for them to win titles. And I think the more these athletes that are really on the top and then stay winning all the time, they know what's going on. Like, they're not oblivious. Like, they're not just thinking, oh, we're so great, we're winning. They know why they're winning. And so a lot of people came to my dad to win games and to win tournaments and to win stuff like that. And entertainers came so that they also can have great success in their fields, in what they were doing.
Sound pretty standard, isn't it? Father Reehil especially talked a lot about this before.
Music goes straight to the heart. And we all know this because we can just hear a song and immediately it affects emotion in us. And that's what I mean by goes to. So good music can go right to the heart in a good way that can draw you deeper in love with God. And demonic music can affect you in a negative way that can lead you away from God. On top of that, many of these, back in the day, the heavy metal bands, the rock bands of America, back in the 80s and 70s, many of them would consecrate their albums to the devil. And they would have a black mass before they released the album to send demons to attach to everybody who buys the album, so they would further advance their music. And I know a priest. He's not a friend of mine, but we've spoken before. And before he was a priest, he was a real estate agent in Los Angeles and made many millions of dollars. Drove a Ferrari, and he went to several of these black masses when he was a real estate agent because he was invited because of his wealth. So he saw it firsthand that they do these things with their music. These days, that was when it was hidden. These days, they're not hiding it. All these, even Taylor Swift, she's really heavily into witchcraft and occult. At least she's giving us that impression by her concert tours and her video. Trying to send another message, it's failing because all she's projecting is witchcraft and occult and sorcery. So what happened? I don't know. I think the power and the money came, and you get deeper in debt to the devil, so to speak, and you start doing his bidding. Because this isn't a one-time thing. This has happened with so many of these. Katy Perry you started singing in church. Many of them are. And they're not trying to hide it because they're producing videos that keep putting the occult symbols out to the public. They're not hiding it. Whenever we are promoting or engaging or paying to watch other people sin, as we do with the movies, that, yes, sin is an open door because, as any exorcist will tell you, it only takes one mortal sin to become possessed. Highly unlikely. It doesn't happen very often, but that's all it takes. The devil only needs one mortal sin. And then a lot of times the themes of this music from these artists is also very risque, very immodest, very sexual, and they're promoting all the capital sins. So you're a 15-year-old boy or girl, and this is like exciting to you, and then you say, I want to be like them, and then you start thinking, well, maybe I should be behaving like this if this is what makes you cool. And they don't know what they're doing. They have no idea this is inviting demons into their life. And then by the time they're 18, they're severely depressed and have suicidal thoughts, and they don't know why. And the parents are so upset, and nobody's looking at the obvious. What are they feeding on? When I say feeding, I mean, what are they putting in their ears and through their eyes?
Okay, now back to the Little Light Studios. Here's the problem, and it's obvious they think intercession of the saints is necromancy, and people like Jonathan Roumie engaging with spiritism. As per usual, I'll share a clip of what they discussed first, and then I'll follow this up with a couple of clips of priests.
There were times when we would do a novena. Do you know what a novena is?
That's the Catholic prayer, isn't it?
Yeah, so we would go as like a procession. And we would go from like church to church, Catholic churches. And we would light candles and we would pray to the saint.
Interesting.
If we wanted something done, we would also go and pray to the saints to do stuff for us. I mean, now I know that was the saints there, that's demonic. But at the time, we would join those Catholic processions and we would go do this from church to church, like in one whole day. We'd go to like 9 different churches and say, 9 sets of praying to different saints all throughout the day. And the thing would happen, like whatever you were praying for, it would happen. So now you believed that there was power in praying to saints, the same way that Catholic did.
The novena appears in the Hallow app, the Catholic prayer meditation app, and we actually did a whole episode on that with how it has strong ties to the Jesuits, which is a secret society that really was created to turn Protestants back toward Catholicism. And yeah, that whole app is like that as well. And they also have the novena app, novena prayer in that. So it's interesting that you mentioned that you guys were voodoo, people, priests, and this is what you guys were doing.
And here's the part on Jonathan Roumie and Padre Pio. It's infuriating, I know, but hopefully the Protestants who are always here watching the videos, you'll have better understanding by the end of this video.
Same with Jonathan Roumie.
This is a Facebook post visiting Saint Padre Pio, one of the most powerful saints and witnesses to the suffering and the miracles of Christ in the 20th century, as well as one with whom I have personal interaction.
And saying that he has had personal interactions with this saint who died before this guy was even born. This is straight up necromancy. This is forbidden in the Bible because you cannot communicate with the dead.
All right, so there's Christianity and then there's spiritualism.
When you're asking, and you're not asking God, you're asking a dead person, you're literally telling the spirit world, hey, I want you to show me something.
Firstly, for all the newcomers here, this is a Catholic channel, meaning I make videos explaining the various spiritual battles, angels and demons, exorcisms, spiritual warfare in general through the lens of the Catholic faith. And the church is much bigger than you can possibly imagine. In case you don't know this, there are 3 states of the church, which are the church militant, church suffering, and church triumphant. And together, these 3 make up the communion of saints we confess in the creed. So, in the case of Jonathan Roumie and St. Padre Pio that those guys talked about earlier, to put it simply, Jonathan Roumie is part of the church militant, while St. Pio is church triumphant. And the souls in purgatory are part of the church suffering.
In the mystical body of Christ, okay, each of the 3 dimensions has their own function, if you will. So, and when we have saints in heaven, one of their primary functions, they're in heaven, so to speak, and not yet complete or full because they don't have their bodies yet. But, intercession, prayer for us, all right, is part of their mission, if you want to call it that. Whereas the souls in purgatory can't. They're stuck, all right? They can't do anything for themselves. So they rely on us. We rely on the saints, all right? the souls in purgatory rely on us. Right? So there's a dynamic here between the three parts of the mystical body, which is very, very important. So again, you don't communicate with the dead because, again, that's a violation of faith. All right, it's a violation of this whole trust in God. Whereas praying to the saints is a different ballgame because they are already in communion with God. You know, we sometimes make a serious mistake and we think that, and you just read the obituaries, you know, all you have to do to get to heaven is die. You know, it's like, you know, die becomes, you know, that becomes your ticket to heaven. That's not necessary. We're making some presumptions there that we don't know for sure whether this person is really in heaven or not, which is why funerals should be focused on praying for the deceased, for the remission of their sins and for their everlasting life, all right? Too many funerals don't do that anymore, all right? They're focused too much on, you know, this person is now in heaven and all those other kinds of stuff. And we can't assume that. And yet we're doing that all over the place. So that's the difference. You know, the saints in heaven intercede for us. We need their intercession. The souls in purgatory need our intercession. So there's a dynamic which is built into the very system, so to speak.
On one hand, I can understand their confusion, those people in the Little Light studio, because they were not raised with this understanding, and obviously they misunderstood what Jonathan Roumie did as necromancy. On the other hand, I also have the responsibility to correct that misunderstanding, and to do that, I choose to share clips of priests like I always have. And it's better to do it this way. I don't have the authority to teach anyway. So for all of you Protestants here, I thank you for your willingness to listen to our Catholic priests. And if you have any question at all, please don't hesitate to ask them in the comment section below.
Now, St. Augustine attributes the soul's ability to be expanded and even stretched to its exercise of desire. St. Augustine states, "The entire life of a good Christian is in fact an exercise of holy desire. Suppose you are going to fill some holder or container, and you know you will be given a large amount. You set about stretching your sack or wineskin or whatever it is. Why? Because you know the quantity you have to put in it. And your fiat, your yes, tell you there is not enough room. By stretching it, therefore, you increase the capacity of the sack. And this is how God deals with us. Simply by making us wait, he increases our desire, which in turn enlarges the capacity of our soul, making it able to receive what is to be given to us." And this is from St. Augustine's Tractates on the first letter of John. So Adam and Eve were in participation, cooperation with the one eternal act of God, who was expanding their soul with each act they did. And they were doing it by means of this void that God had placed within them. So suppose, for example, how could I use an off-the-cuff analogy here to drive this home very simply? Suppose you had a balloon and you wanted to put water within it, and you see that the balloon is very small. And as you keep adding water, it expands and expands and expands to the point that surprises you. You would say to yourself, how would I know that this elastic piece of rubber could contain so much water? Indeed, maybe 2 gallons. But now, take that balloon and make it capable of containing not just water, but the entire cosmos. That's your soul, by analogy in simple terms. And it gets better. The expansivity of the soul has no limit. Even the blessed and angels in heaven continue to expand their souls by virtue of God's outpouring of love and bliss and happiness for all eternity in heaven. And the rate of the growth of their expansion in heaven is determined by the rate of their growth in holiness on earth. So if someone progressed at, let's say, 60 miles an hour in holiness on earth, that rate will continue for all eternity in heaven. If they progressed at 100 miles an hour, then that rate would continue in heaven. Now, I, who am an Italian, drove in Italy, and there were autobahns that had no speed limit, so we would go 100 miles an hour. But that's just a little joke here. The point is, I'm using miles per hour as an example. What I'm talking about is desire. Desire is the rate of growth at which the soul seeks to love God for all eternity. Its rate of growth is what determines its perpetual love of God for all eternity. It begins on earth and it continues in heaven. And the soul's soul continues to expand as its desire grows. And that desire never stops in heaven. It keeps increasing. And this is the mystery of eternity. We're always used to thinking of something coming to an end. Well, in heaven, it never does. It's a continual growth ad infinitum.
Well then, that will be all for the video this time. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. And hopefully all of you have learned so much from this video. And remember, if ever you have any feedback or suggestion, please let us know in the comments below. Anyway, if you like what we do and you'd like to support us, I left a link to our PayPal donation in the description box below, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your continuous support, contributions, and prayers. And until the next one, thanks again for watching and may God bless you.